There are so many different anime out there that range from being so bad they're funny to, in some rare cases, the best of the best. Of course there is a large range here, but it's less constricting than giving different elements of the show a numerical value like we did in the past. Today we are looking at Goblin Slayer. Goblin Slayer is one of those anime that don't pull any punches when it comes to the brutality of its world. Don't get me wrong, there's not many anime out there that can beat the likes of Berserk, but it doesn't mean that we can't get close, and I think Goblin Slayer does a good job of that without going absolutely bonkers with its story. If you've never heard of Goblin Slayer, then I'll give you a little rundown of its world and some backstory. Funnily enough, the world of Goblin Slayer is quite basic. It's your average fantasy world with humans, elves, dwarves, and some other beast folk, and obviously there's monsters that are hostile. The world on its own isn't what makes Goblin Slayer so unique compared to your average isekais or any other fantasy world. It's the fact that the creatures and adventuring in and of itself is brutal. Monsters don't pull any punches, and the worst are obviously goblins. This is the part of the video where I should mention that this anime is not for the faint of heart. It includes scenes of gore, sexual violence, and so on. If that doesn't bother you, then please continue, but if not, then you've been warned. And while you're here, why not press that subscribe button, give us a like, and turn on notifications for our future videos. You see, the goblins in Goblin Slayer are not just your average stupid monsters who go around killing for the sake of it. No. They're very violent since birth, and they have a proclivity to attack and keep female adventurers. Guys, I just really wanted to watch an isekai. What the fuck is this? Yeah, I really wasn't kidding when I said that this anime is brutal. I'll try not to spoil the extent of the goblins' intelligence or their tactics, as those get explored in the show, and ignoring the things that they do, it's interesting to see how these creatures, which are looked down upon as dumb and animalistic, use different tactics in warfare against adventurers. Then again, this show is called Goblin Slayer, so wait, what the hell is that? Do you guys hear that? Wait, is that boss music? What the fuck? I won't lie, I absolutely love the design of Goblin Slayer in the show. He's got the cool ass dreadnought helmet with a torn plume. He uses a short sword so it can be used in tight spaces. He's even got fur accents on that bitch. Whoa! This kind of stuff, as a character artist, really gets me going. Now, I'm sure you don't need me to explain what happens next, as it's pretty obvious given his name, and you may be wondering what made Goblin Slayer the way that he is. Well, let's just say he's got the whole tragic backstory, but worse. He was a regular farmer's kid whose village just so happened to be attacked by goblins, and so he and his sister hid away in their house. But his sister, knowing that they'd eventually get to him, hid him away in the closet where he was forced to stay quiet while watching the goblins, you know. I think we can all understand his hatred for goblins at this point. That all aside, he manages to save the girl called Priestess. Yes, that's literally her name, and after he does so, she decides to go along with him on his goblin genocide missions, where along the way he meets some new companions and so forth. That is the basic story of Goblin Slayer, and I'd rather not say much more, as I think it's something you should experience for yourselves. Now, onto the parts that I really liked about the show. The first is definitely the world. I love anime that can take a normal or reused setting, and by either changing a few aspects or flip the entire world on its head, they create a world that can be separated from its story and still seem interesting. By doing this, it doesn't feel as though the world is dependent on the main characters, and it makes me want to see more of it. Some great examples of this are Sword Art Online, Shield Hero, Overlord, etc. All bangers by the way, but going back on topic, the harsh reality of this fantasy world definitely cuts through the usual fantasy aesthetic and reminds you that it's not all fun and games, whether you're a seasoned adventurer or just a pleasant farmer. Next is the cool action and gore. Let me be clear, this isn't a Jujutsu Kaisen or AOT when it comes to animation, nowhere close. However, despite that, the action and the ways you see Goblin Slayer deal with goblins and monsters alike is still entertaining to watch. It really does help that this show makes the goblins out to be horrible and utterly despicable, as every scene that is gruesome for the goblins feels good to watch despite how masochistic this may sound. Goblins in this world are simply not good creatures, whether they've just been born or are higher class and have higher intelligence. They all seem to have a predatory need within them to do bad things, and the more you learn of this, the less you care about the gruesome tactics Goblin Slayer employs to kill them. Finally, the characters. They feel good. There's an anime called Yusha, also known as Archenemy and Hero. The reason I bring up this anime is because it shares the trait where the characters of the show don't have names and instead their titles, such as Hero or Priestess, are used to address them always. This was one of the things I hated in Archenemy and Hero because, especially in a romance show, it seemed off that we didn't know their names, and I found myself disliking the show as I couldn't get invested. However, in Goblin Slayer, even though this trait is present, I don't find it an issue. This is probably because despite the fact that the characters play an important role in both shows, in Goblin Slayer it never seems as important because of the quests they have. The quests are almost always put on the forefront with minor flashbacks or sections where they show the party growing closer to each other, which all seem apt. However, this will slightly collide with one of the weak points in the show, which I will get into now. The cons. While I do like the characters, I do wish there was some more emphasis or look into some of their backstories. This is because, as far as I remember, we only get to see the backstory of Goblin Slayer and one other character's life outside of adventuring. The three other party members, even though they speak about their cultures as they're all different races, don't have their backstories or cultures shown throughout the show. This may be because of two things. Either the author will touch upon these characters in later parts of the show, or the animation studio cut parts from the manga or light novel to save on time and budget. It's not a massive problem, but for a person like me who likes to get attached to characters, I need these things for the connection to be stronger. The second problem is that certain plot points don't hold any real meaning and or haven't been shown yet. I know this might seem cheap to say it's a problem with the show when it might get touched on in the next seasons, but hear me out. There's sections in the anime where they show the world's heroes fight higher level demons and such. Sounds fine, right? Well, it would be, if it wasn't for the fact that those scenes are too short for us to even care. In the second season, their actions are indirectly linked with the actions of Goblin Slayer, which is cool as it shows autonomy within the world, but it's still not enough for us to care as it doesn't really explain how these actions affect the main characters. There's simply not enough of these scenes to hold any real value. Pair that with the 5-year difference between the two seasons that we have, and I had already forgotten about the hero's party before I got to the second season, and these scenes served as more of a hindrance than anything else. Once again, I realize how you may think it's weird for me to judge this, as I said I love world building, but with the amount of episodes we get per season and how long these seasons take to come out, just makes this annoying. That also moves me on to the third problem. Season 1 and 2 could have had more. I absolutely loved the first season when it came out. It simply did not compare to the other anime coming out at around the same time, so I was really excited for a new season. I was a little disappointed that we only got 12 episodes at first, but I figured they'd come out with a new one in about 2 to 3 years, considering how good this show seemed. But no, it took 5 years. Yes, I'm aware that we got a movie in between, but let me also mention that at the time I found out the movie was coming out, I thought it was not going to be canon because most anime movies are not. Turns out, it is. My mistake. That aside, I just wish we got more episodes. My guess is that the studio had a budget, and that's also why the animation in the second season was worse. I guess you could say that this kind of is a good thing too. It's so good I want more, so I guess I didn't really think about that. Also, for all you degenerates out there, yes, the second season is way more toned down in terms of gore and stuff like that. I don't know who needs to hear that. I ain't judging. With all my good and bad points being said, I'd rate Goblin Slayer on our very nice and new rating format as pretty good. It's not close to the anime coming out this year, but it's definitely above the mid shows by far, simply because of how unique the show is and the breath of fresh air for people who like more brutal takes on fantasy genres. I really enjoyed the first season, and while the second season wasn't as good, it still kept me entertained, and I can't wait to see what is waiting for us in the third. Anyways, that'll do it for today's review. I know this might have seemed a little all over the place, but I hope that despite that, you understand what I meant. Other people might disagree, which is fine, but release dates for anime do matter a lot, as hype does go down over time, and for shows to stay relevant they need to give us something to keep our interest. Either way, please be sure to comment your opinion in the comments below, as we do read them and reply as much as we can. I'll see you guys in the next review.